Hey guys, what's up? It's BigJackFilms here, and welcome back to another commentary. Again, I haven't done one of these in a while, so for the next 45 minutes, we're going to be talking about this particular episode of the King Kong musical, and down the line I might do more of these, because you guys seem to really enjoy this, so let's go. So, this episode's origin basically stems back to when they announced the musical over, like, a decade ago when, like, before it even came out, which, I'll get to in a sec. I just want to point out, too, that this, whole opening scene where we pan down to the theater and everything is... I knew this is how I wanted to start it, by basically homaging the original film's transition from Skull Island to New York, except there's no big King Kong, eighth one of the world sign. It's just, like, kind of slanted. I think that was a missed opportunity from the Broadway musical that they didn't do that and try to mimic that, but, you know, Bob's your uncle. So, this episode, again, I knew I wanted to cover, but I wasn't too sure if the musical, because it started in Australia, and I didn't know if it was going to be coming to New York, but when they announced it was coming to New York, I was, like, telling people I know, I was like, okay, we gotta go to see this shit, and we gotta get a ticket, we gotta go to New York, we gotta do this, and the way this came about was, I mean, obviously I was seeing the show prior on YouTube, and I will say, one of the contributors of getting clips for this episode was from Ike Studio, so thank you very much. Now, this whole bit is obviously based on when Carl Denham comes out and says his whole speech on Broadway. I was trying to mimic as much of the original film as possible. And I love at the end, you hear, like, a taxi crash, and there's, like, some angry shit. That audio, it's like, you motherfucker, it came from a TikTok that I just had always laughed my ass off. I'm like, I've always wanted to incorporate that stuff. So a lot of this footage was provided by Ike Studios, who did sneak camera in and get the scenes and, like, get the show. He actually got, like, 2 different shows for me, with 2 different seat angles. But then there was a version of the show that did pop up that was just a one-shot angle and a wide. I think it was for, like, rehearsal tapes or something, but it gave a whole perspective on it, and it's probably the only better quality of it. I've always wondered if they ever, like, you see this preview footage, these trailer-esque press footage, if they actually just did a show and they actually just filmed it, I would like to see that version. But this episode, when they announced it in Australia, I was like, okay, I gotta go see this thing, or I gotta find a way to watch it, because I have to review it. This is definitely gonna go on the list. And it took me a while. I could never find the Australian version fully, only in chunks. But then when it came to Broadway, yeah, I had to go see it. And it was either A, I was going to review it with the footage, or I was going to go to New York and actually make it an effort to make it, like, more authentic that I go to the actual city. So thankfully my dad surprised me with a special birthday gift where we did go to Manhattan in February 2019. This was a year out before the pandemic, so we got really lucky. And we went there, and we filmed 2 episodes. We filmed the musical episode, and the New York locations episode. So I might do a commentary on that, maybe not, but this will probably do for now. And I got to see the show, and I already kind of had some noted script notes ready to go prior to seeing it, and then when I saw the show the next night, I was writing up the rest of the review, because I knew I was probably going to cover the rest of it later. This was more about getting the live host segments and shooting it all near the theater and stuff. So a lot of this was just kind of where I wanted to go. Now, obviously, yes, the Walking with Dinosaurs show did play a part in the creation of the show. I'm thinking at some point I want to cover the BBC series. I don't know if I ever will, but more dinosaur videos do guarantee more views, which is a plus. But I will not cover that piece of shit movie they made, because that was not good. And yeah, I did see this show twice. I want to see the Jurassic World one they did, but unfortunately, you know, because, like, I want to see the exhibition more than I do the big arena show, because the animatronics look so much better. These animatronic dinosaurs, the stiff ones, were from a trip to Canada's Wonderland that me and Evan took when we were shooting the Jurassic Park ride episode, because we had to use Wonderland to substitute for the theme park tone, which we're actually in the next season going to go back to for pickups and reshoots for a couple of things. Now, yeah, a lot of this, my hope was it was going to be an arena show that had Kong fight the dinosaurs and all that stuff, which I think would have been spectacular, but obviously because it was going to be a musical, they cut down and they had to condense it all into one stage, but still, stage-wise, it was very impressive. And I don't know if this was still the same mannequin, or if it was, like, originally going to be a full-scale animatronic, but then they thought, you know, if we just do a mannequin, it'll be a lot cheaper and a lot lighter to carry around. But, yeah, like, there was a lot, I had a lot of my imagination soaring when I saw that leaked photo, especially after Walking with Dinosaurs. I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. And, no, that didn't eventually happen. And I know the show, since it closed, they've actually, I think they're moving it to Japan, which is appropriate, because, you know, the Japanese eat kaiju shit right the fuck up. They love that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping someday somebody does upload the Broadway, the Australian version, because I do want to see more of the comparisons between this and the New York one. This footage, a lot of people ask me where I get this footage from the behind the scenes of Kong 76. That came from a 16mm kind of educational documentary that they would show at schools called King Kong Fact or Fantasy. It was a thing that came out during the press of the 76 remake, but it was 16mm documentary about, like, apes and monkeys and stuff that was being made at the time this movie was being put out. And they were shown, you know, like, back in the old days, you know, before, you know, digital stuff, they would show educational stuff on 16mm for kids and in school. So that footage was, I have a lot of that footage backed up in my files, and that was actually provided by a guy who I got a 16mm print DVD rip of the extended TV cut of Kong 76 before it came out on Blu-ray. This joke, because when I was filming in Manhattan, I was just kind of exploring, you know, the sights and sounds, and there's a really cool Disney store in Times Square, and I saw they had a little Pinocchio thing, and I was just thinking in my head, because as I'm walking around and traveling and location scouting, I'm also editing and coming up with jokes. So I see that Pinocchio, and I'm like, oh, I bring up that it's a puppet on strings. Okay, I got the perfect joke here. And that's the thing, like, even before the concept of a musical, the commentary for King Homer, Al Jean said, I did see King Kong on Broadway, and after a half hour I walked out. And this is, like 20 years before the idea of a musical happened, so I'm like, Al Jean, what the fuck are you talking about in the commentary? It's a good commentary, by the way, if you get a chance. That was kind of hinting at, like, I think I covered Legend around this time. Because, again, a lot of this was shot, like, this was released a year after I filmed so much stuff, and so I think it was right in the heart of the pandemic. Like, the first year, at least. But yeah, it took forever for them. Apparently, I was talking to people who were, you know, in New York saying, yeah, they're just taking forever to find the right space and no theater will hold it, so they finally found one that was a little closer to Times Square. This is the biggest flaw I have with the story of Kong. You know, you talk about, okay, how did they get him to New York? It's a boat. But how do they get him in the theater without anybody noticing? And unlike actual making of movies where they have to cut him in chunks and put them together, I'm sorry, with a 25-foot gorilla, you kind of can't fucking do that without being noticed. So that is the biggest flaw. This bit right here is interesting. So I was filming, this legitimately happened, because while we were filming these 2 episodes, it was in the middle of this terrible ice storm. So I was slipping and falling, I was mining soap, we had rain piss on us, it was terrible. And when I got this shot of, like, looking at the theater, a big chunk of ice fell right on my head, and it really hurt. It hurt a little later, but there were people, New York people, like, I'll just say this, the people of New York are really nice people. They help each other out. And when I got hit in the head, there were a couple of people like, dude, are you okay? You okay? I said, I'm okay. I'm okay. So that was a legit accident that happened there. And yeah, I had to make a joke about, oh, it cost me $20. They don't cost $20 now. Hell no. But it was fun to film near the marquee. Now, my only concern was I was going to get a couple stares from people who were should work at the show, but then be like, what the fuck is he doing? But what's interesting, too, is I did at one point attempt, I can say this now, I attempted to see if I could maybe talk to some people backstage, behind the scenes, bring the camera, and, you know, maybe talk to some of the actors, and maybe even, see the animatronics and stuff backstage, because that happened on a prior incident when I went to New York, when I went to see the Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark musical, which, by the way, I actually do think is actually really good. I'll get to that in a second. But this show, I really want to see the full show, but unfortunately there's no, full version online except for previews, and that's a shame because I want to actually review this and give it a positive rating because it looks really damn impressive. So, to that show, the Maverick theater production, I want to see the full thing. But the whole thing with Spider-Man is that I actually thought it was better than most of the live-action remakes. I'm one of the few minorities to actually say, no, this show was actually really good despite all the behind-the-scenes problems. And what was really cool about going to see that show was I actually got to go backstage and meet the actors. I met the guy who played Spider-Man, the guy who played the Green Goblin. I got to go on the stage and see all the props and stuff. It was really cool, so I thought, oh, I would love to do the same thing here with Kong. Unfortunately, we just did not have time, and the people who were running the show were saying they were already kind of busy and they were shutting down for the night. But, you know, overall the episode did turn out the best, I think. There was some, like, I actually had enough to work with. But yeah, like, even like Carl Denham, the guy who plays Denham I really like in this, except when he gets to the third act where his character takes a total shift, but he does look like the Riddler. I was evolving to make more Batman jokes. You know what? I will defend the Super Mario Brothers movie. I know it's not good, but it's a guilty pleasure. Yeah, and it was shot in the same North Carolina sound stages where they shot King Kong Lives, which was funny. They also actually filmed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie there, the first one. And yeah, anytime I can, look, I make a lot of jabs at the Star Wars prequels, and when I get to that, I'm going to talk about this stuff more, because this is one of the few instances of Episode 3 I do not like. That audio was from the late Patrice O'Neill on the Opie and Anthony show, ranting about Episode 3 and saying how, like, they completely rushed the whole Darth Vader origin, which is true. But yeah, and then, okay, so this whole thing that people have been asking when the show came out, I'm surprised it didn't get much of a backlash, because you know how they changed like original stories to be more modern for modern audiences, and I'm surprised this one slipped through the cracks when it did. I think it was because it was in the early stages of that major flooding of annoyance in regards to Hollywood's like changes of stuff, which even I'm somewhat also against, but not to the level of, like, geeks and gamers who I don't like, and I do make a big jab at them because I think those guys are kind of dicks. Like, there's, like, look, I prefer the critical drinker over geeks and gamers, because geeks and gamers is just really aggressive. I love this joke. I love editing this together and just doing my worst Jack Black impression. But yeah, like, oh, and then Lumpy. Like, this is funny, because, like, ever since I started reading more of the novel, and that's one of the reasons why this show got away with what it did, was because it was based on the novel, which was in the public domain ever since the 75 court case with Universal and Paramount. The novel has still been in the public domain, and that's how a lot of these unofficial Kong adaptations get made, is if they just slap based on the novel by Bull Goldman, or not Bull Goldman, I can't remember, yeah, Bull Goldman, they can get away with it. And it's kind of like, it's a big loophole in the rights. That's why even in my remake I said I added a Bull Goldman credit, because I was like, hey, it's public domain. So, it was interesting that they put Lumpy into sort of the replacement for Jack Driscoll, because Jack Driscoll is nowhere in this movie, and it's one of the reasons, they made changes, because they wanted Anne to be more independent and a bit more on, she can take care of herself, she doesn't need the man to save her, which, yes, is one of the trademarks of the story. It's the classic fairy tale trope of the prince who rescues the princess from the dragon's lair. But in this one, I was okay with it, with the topics they wanted to talk about. I think that's what makes it acceptable, is that the subjects they wanted to discuss regarding people of color in the 1930s was important to discuss, and I think using Kong as a background for that was okay. But yeah, here's the Geeks and Gamers joke, because I think they just go too overboard. You can have your discussions about all this shit, but they take it way too far. And they also sometimes bite each other in the ass, hence the Super Mario Brothers movie, because they were bitching about it, and then, oh wow, it's not that bad. So they had to, like, make a complete 180. And yeah, it was all based on Ruth Rose's, a lot of her experiences with Issac and Cooper. I know in the next few seasons I'm going to actually talk about the original more. But yeah, I just love those meme images, because, oh, God, those women, those type of women are just the worst. They are fucking annoying. So yeah, I did like what they did here. I thought the changes were appropriate. I also did like that they changed the Skull Island stuff. So it was all used appropriately, subtly. It wasn't too forced in your face. And and it worked really well. A lot of this footage actually came from the documentary on, you can get it on the Ultimate Edition Blu-ray of the Peter Jackson film called Kong's New York 1933, which is actually a great educational piece on the history of New York during that time, and it was a pretty rough place. I mean, I think I lost it at, like, Hoovervilles, which I'm like, wow, people were that broke they had to create their own society, and I'm like, why the fuck aren't we doing that now? In this economy, that's a laugh. And yeah, I think, there's just so much that they kind of did their own spin-off, and it made it work. Now, when I shot these episodes, when I was doing the host segments, I had to corner out what I was discussing and finding locations that match. So, like, when I talk about the animatronic Kong and bringing in a comparison to 76, I'm gonna go to the Queens, where those scenes of the 76 movie took place, even though it was shot in LA. The stuff here was, I mean, the Jesus Christ on a popsicle stick and being next to the big church that was used in 76, I felt was appropriate. I actually recorded that scream later because I didn't want to offend people that might have been going that day. And yes, I did bring King Kong Comics with me. That book is like my one-to go for Kong jokes because it's a good book. Don't get me wrong, but the 50 Shades of Faye section, which is like the eroticism chapter, is some of the funniest shit with Kong that I've ever heard. So if I can ever reflect back to that, I will, because it is so goddamn funny, and there's so much in that book I can pull from. And yeah, I just that is really funny. So yeah, I go there. I would go to Queens. I would go to the Empire State Building for the ending, which I thought was appropriate. And yeah, this animatronic, man, I would have loved to see this up close, because I think part of me is always trying to seek out that feeling of regret that I never got a photo with the Kong bust from Confrontation. So any chance I can see a full-size Kong in the flesh is always a treat, and especially when I go to Universal and I go to Skull Island Reign of Kong, because it's actually made by the same creature designers that made this, which is really impressive. That these guys, the creature designers in Australia, they're on a roll. And they also, I mean, right now they're doing, I think they just did the stuff for the Jurassic World exhibition that's been touring around lately. Yeah, just, all that stuff's great. So, I will also say, I do love the fact, too, that they used rear screen projection for the backgrounds. That takes a lot from the original Kong special effects. It's a total love letter in disguise as a musical. And the puppeteers are great. I've talked to a few of them, and they've told me, dude, if you had ever gotten this, you would have had a ball of fun doing this kind of shit. Yep, that's just that Kong's great. If you ever want to get up to Kong up close, but you don't want to go to New York and pay a shit ton of money, just go to Florida. Yeah, so this is the Queensville Bridge, and that big cable tower that's where the Roosevelt tram, so that's sort of the Confrontation area. But the reason I show this location was that was the closest I could get in Queens to where they had the presentation with the big animatronic that Carlo Rambaldi built for 76. It's not the exact location, but I tried to map up the closest, because that's sort of where Jeff Bridges would be when he's walking to the show. But at the same time, it was all shot in LA. That whole sequence was shot in LA, disguised in New York. And that line, "This corporation billions," that's from the extended TV cut, which at the time I made this episode had not been released yet. So I was having to use a European Blu-ray and either, the stuff taped on TV, whatever I could to express myself up. That animatronic did cost like $4 million. This is the part of the show that I'll admit I actually was taken back, and it felt real, because I was realizing at that point that's why I think this was made, to make us a part of the story. So the fact that it's a Broadway show within a Broadway show is kind of like some Inception shit, but this worked. I was actually looking up thinking, that thing's real and it's alive and it's going to kill us all. And it worked. This effect worked. When he's on two legs, it works. It was really cool to see. Now, this was on a clear day when it wasn't raining. The rain was very off and on. But, yeah, that was on a clear day. So there were some days we got lucky, and some days we didn't. I remember, I think some of them I actually did reshoots on, because the rain was so piss poor. I couldn't, really use the footage when I looked back at the dailies. So yeah, all this again, the rear screen projection that goes back to the original. Plus, this was at the height of the whole LED projection technology that was started with The Mandalorian and what Lucasfilm has been doing with their shows to cut costs. But now it's like updated to modern technology. I think is a nice nod, not just to the original film, but also to the special effects of Willis O'Brien. Like, this stuff worked. A lot of that stuff did work. And yeah, the Wanderer, people think the Wanderer in Kong Skull Island was the one from the original, and it's not. The original was specifically called the SS Venture. The ship was called the Wanderer in the novel to evade any copyright from RKO. They tried to evade as much as physically possible. But yeah, I love the fact that this technology exists. Okay, do I think it's going to replace green screen? Oh yeah, big time. Am I disappointed with that? Yeah, because I still like using green screen. I still like using blue screen, because it is a little easier. But do I wish I could get this technology? Yeah. But does it require a lot of space? Oh my god, yeah. So I'm no way ever going to get that kind of technology. And yeah, the whole thing about, like, the Skull Island, the way they do the whole presentation scene without the natives, by having it where the vines are alive and they basically pick Anne up and, like, she screams in terror. She's more scared of the jungle environment than the natives or being drugged or whatever. So I thought that was a clever change to not just abridge the story, but still tell the story they wanted to tell with the changes they made. It was a smart move. Anybody who was complaining about, but they didn't have the natives do a big showcase number, you gotta be careful with that nowadays, unfortunately. And, even the Peter Jackson movie, like, they kind of did that when Carl Denham did his show with the natives and Bruce Baxter, and they were it was a total nod to the Max Steiner music from the original, and, but presented in a way that 1930s New Yorkers and, audiences would understand. But, yeah, this stuff was great. I love the fact that the Weta guys just described that Skull Island will eat you alive. They actually knew what they were doing with that movie. I gotta re-review the Peter Jackson film and give it a better fair shake, because when I made that original review, it was rushed, and it was, at the time, I was just 1996 obsessed. So I didn't really give it a fair shake for what it was. Anytime I can show media outside of the movies, so I can just check it off the list, I will. So, like, anything with Robot Chicken, this was a good chance to just show that, so people don't say, "Can you talk about the Robot Chicken skits?" It's like, no, there it is. There's my presentation of it. There's not much to even review with these. The stop motion is good, and the sets look good, and that's it. Like, Robot Chicken knows what they're doing. So yeah, it's just I do like the vine sets. Like, do I wish there was more jungle stuff, like maybe some cardboard 2D trees and stuff? Yeah. But you could tell, like, the production designers, they did their homework in terms of just trying to make it a musical, make it fun, but also make as many nods to the original, both in the movies and behind the scenes. So even, like, making the jungles look like the miniature sets was cool. Now, fun fact, even in the Peter Jackson film, there's a lot of Easter eggs in the movie, and one of them is Denham's pages when he's looking at Jack. So he's like, "This is the script, Jack. This is 14 pages." Those are the pages of Edgar Wallace's first draft of Kong. Like, they're legit pages, and there's even, like, spears in the wall, and there's posters of, like, Chang and stuff. So there's that. Again, there's a lot of that. Now this I love this joke where it's like, oh, there's 2 animatronics, and then I have the joke of 2. What do you mean 2? I've been using a lot of counting clips, per se, to kind of just make a couple of jabs. Like, even in Ready Player One, it's like 3, and just Tim Curry's going 3. This was a last-minute shot I had to shoot on my phone because I didn't have my camera at the time, and I had to make this quick while I was on the go, because I'm like, okay, I'll have to talk about the snake scene very quickly in a host segment. And the way it's set up is sort of reminiscent of something you'd see Charlie Callahan, a.k.a. Theme Snark, do in, like, one of his retrospectives at the parks. But yeah, I was surprised that they did this. That was actually a cool effect, that they were able to get the giant snake in there, at least some other creature. It does raise the flag flaws of the fact that there's, like, other giant creatures other than Kong on the island, so you think, what the hell else is out there? That photo I found on Facebook. I have a lot of rare behind-the-scenes photos from these movies that I'm going to show off in the future. That it's cool to always showcase those as sort of these exclusive photos or clips. But Yeah, the snake turned out really well. I was really impressed how they made that work on stage for what they could. Again, did I wish for a dinosaur? Yeah, but I think the snake is okay because it shows there's, like, more, like, kind of bugs and little critters and stuff around. And yes, one may fight Kong, but they're gonna get their ass kicked. And I do like how it's, like, essentially, like, the hook that comes in and, like, drags the actor off stage. And I did like the fact that you see the blood from the back, and it looks like some sort of neo-nuclear waste. Like, looks like some sort of, like, nuclear stuff. Like, I love that. I love that. That's a great effect. That's a great way to do it without freaking out the kids. The songs are hit or miss for me. Like, lately, modern Broadway songs sometimes don't really hit the mark. I mean, this Calling musical did have one or two songs I actually do think are really catchy. In fact, one I did use on the trailer, which was Get Happy from the Australian version, which, when I heard it, I was like, why does this sound like something Beyonce would sing? But then I realized that what they used as a reference was the track, a classic track, but it was mostly used in a movie called Battle Royale called Requiem, and you might have also heard it in the trailers and stuff for when the nerd fought the critic back in the day. And yeah, stuff like this actually worked. I was surprised how well they made the Empire State Building scene work with the fog below the cone and, you know, using the projection of the skyline. Like, this was very impressive stuff, what they did here. Was really cool. And when it comes to, again, just, I completely lost track of thought. Yeah, a lot of the songs don't work here and there. Like, even Spider-Man, the only song I really remember was Bouncing Off the Wall, and because that just sounds like something Bono would write, and Bono did write the songs for those. And yeah, I like this one a little bit better, like the whole, like, opening of... It's tough to decide. That was the biggest problem doing this review, is that which songs were better, the ones from Australia and the ones from New York. And honestly, both are almost evenly matched. I like the one in the Australia, the opening, and I do like this one. One thing I wanted to make a joke of, I can never find a way to squeeze it in, was the track Queen of New York. When it comes to, like, the chanting, all I was thinking was, this sounds like The Lion King. And I will admit, yes, I have seen The Lion King musical, and I love that one a lot. I think that was one of my first Broadway musicals. It was that and Beauty and the Beast. But yeah, I love the way they've set this up, and I love the fact that it also takes place in 1931 rather than 32, 33, because the Empire State Building was being constructed, and I like the fact that almost like in this adaptation, the Empire State Building is still not finished. You look at the cone, and it's still not done. And that's a nice little detail that, even though I didn't notice it, I kind of like that little detail that they added in the production design. Now, the Sarah McLachlan. I've been very hit or miss since I found out what she does. I love what she does with the SPCA, but those commercials did get very annoying, and they are very depressing. And this line where it's like, I'm about to ruin your entire fucking day. That was Looney Chee Bunny, where you could find on Instagram and stuff, one of my best friends, and she did such a funny bit doing Sarah McLachlan. I'm like, okay, I have to add this in. Okay, this part, I was like, when I was looking at the songs, I see special effects, I'm like, wow. Wow. Like, I love using the Metal Gear sound, but this was like something out of, like, Howard the Duck. I was like, what the fuck? That was my only response. What the fuck is this? It is one of those instances where it's like, okay, I'm glad the Broadway musical made changes, because this is a little... cringy. Okay, so yes, this actually is a callback to when I did my Valentine's Day special. I would not recommend watching that movie. It's so boring. The effects are nice when they're there, but it is such a boring film. But I do give credit to when they gave me the DVD that they gave me a lot of shit, so. There is stuff, I liked adding the commercial break there, which was fun. Anyway, back to the show. I do feel like, the Broadway version was better of this particular song, because honestly, the original, this one with Jack Driscoll, it felt like either Coldplay or it felt like Free Falling, which I made a joke about. Now, funny, when I made this joke, at the time, I think James made a joke about how many villains fall to their death and used a cover of Free Falling, which is a great song. But yeah, this is like Coldplay meets Free Falling. But the Broadway one I like, even though that, you know what, when I was watching it on stage and hearing it, it did remind me of Bouncing Off the Walls from Spider-Man. This cover of Free Falling is on YouTube, and that's something I've learned to try to evade copyright, because copyright has been a bit more stingy lately in terms of music, is use cover tracks, because that will save you a lot of time. Just make sure you credit the artists and stuff to help them out, because cover artists do work hard on their music, and they do need that attention. But yeah, this is something right out of the Spider-Man musical. In fact, I'm surprised they didn't do this type of thing in the musical, where they had, like, you know, wires that the actors could, like, climb on and shit. That actually would have been kind of cool. And then this was the equal ground. The Full Moon Lullaby, I think, was the one thing that kind of bridged the two shows together. And I do prefer the Australian one, because it's just more soothing. And I think this one's a bit more... I guess a bit more... It's a bit too much, is the best way I can describe it. But both do an amazing... And both actresses do an amazing job. Okay, so in regards to... what else happened when I was in New York in terms of filming, it was really just filming those segments. The trip to New York was very chill. Dad most of the time spent his time in the hotel and just kind of explored some other places. We did go to a few cool places. We met up with some of his Vietnam buddies, and we went to a really nice restaurant that was right by the Freedom Tower. And the food was absolutely amazing. I will say the best food in Manhattan for me is the Hangover Square, which was used in 76, where Jack and Ann go down to get a drink. Their food is the best in the city. If you ever go down to New York and you want something to eat, go there. Go to Bubblegum Shrimp. There's plenty of great ones there. I actually do like the McDonald's in Manhattan. One of them actually shows anime, which is fun. Finding any footage of the Phantom musical, like, I know there's here and there in terms of just, like, modern shows, but I wanted to try to find the OG stuff, and that's tougher than it looks to find the original. And I actually do like the Schumacher film. I do like the Schumacher adaptation of the musical. I think it does work really well. Although, I'm one of those people who thinks the Phantom needs to go back to being scary, and not just a romantic, you know, musical number. I do feel like that. When they did this musical piece, they did take from the Peter Jackson movie with the beautiful sequence that's on the sunset. Although that shot prior, it looks like Kong wasn't even moving. Like, guys, puppeteers, you gotta work on that. Yeah, you know, it's funny, when I added this clip, I went back and watched Rugrats in Paris, and I was like, I remember I used to love the second one when it came out, and I didn't look at it since, but I look back and I'm like, oh yeah! The Rugrats trilogy, surprisingly still holds up and it actually works as a trilogy of movies. Maybe someday I'll cover those. There's some songs that I thought were just cringe. This was probably the cringiest song. Nothing against the actors, but, you know, they tried to make it work, but yeah, this was the cringiest song of the show. I remember I was in the back of my seat like, oh, I'm not liking this one. There are some minor issues with it, but I did enjoy it. And yeah, like, this goes on forever. I want to try to bring up more stuff, but we're stuck on this song segment, and this commentary has to last through the whole track. Oh, God, help. Yeah, okay. Why does Colin look like he's humping the building? Why does it look like he's humping the building? But I do, in this segment, prefer the Australian one for the more, the Get Happy, because that is a better song to add. This footage was also provided by Ike. This was one of the angles Ike did get when he was recording the show. He got one at this angle on the top balcony view, and then you got one a bit lower, but both sides actually didn't. I did manage to capture a few decent angles that I could use for my segment. So again, thank you so much, Ike Studios, for providing stuff. Again, there was not enough footage of the Australian one, so I had to sometimes, this was one of the first times I had to recycle footage because there wasn't enough to go around. And I really wish somebody would like leak or show the full Australian version so I can make comparisons. Like, it's one of those like lost pieces of media that I don't think will ever see the light of day unless somebody leaks it online. Again, it was fun to kind of just film next to the marquees of the show. Yeah, there's that. Again, recycling footage. In terms of just if I ever go back to New York again, I do want to at some point and explore more stuff, because one of the things I did when I did my locations episode, I didn't get much into Queens because I was on a bit of a time crunch. So next time I want to explore more of Queens and a few other places, and maybe even shoot at the American Museum of Natural History, which would be nice, because I've been there once and it was spectacular. I know with like some episodes coming out, we are filming in a couple of museums and a couple of parks and stuff. And yeah, I feel bad for this actor because he's actually really good, but that whole 180 shift at the end of the show, I was actually kind of like, I get what they're trying to do, because they were trying to make light of the Me Too movement, where, you know, the people you trust who like show what they have and you trust them, and then they turn around and they get kind of hands-on with you. I get the message, and I get with at the time this was being made, they had to put that in to send a message. But quite honestly, here it felt kind of forced, and I wish it was cut. I wish they would have actually at least give more reason to, but at least they tried. But this is the one part of the show I'm like, yeah, this doesn't make sense for this character. If you had set up that the character is a bit of a sleazy asshole early on, then I would have been okay with it. Like Charles Grodin. Like Charles Grodin, you know this guy's the bad guy, so of course you're not gonna trust him. But in this one, it was just like, oh, he was actually nice. It was basically going from Robert Armstrong in the original for the first 2/3, and then the third act, boom, Jack Black or Charles Grodin. It for the character, it comes out of fucking nowhere. And it's why I like how there's different incarnations of Carl Denham. In the original, he's the nice one. In the 70s, he's the villain. And then the third one, he's desperate. Jack Black's character is played off as a desperate Orson Welles, always dodging bullets, and that's what made him kind of go a little like nuts and capturing Kong at the end. I would have actually, this would have been a good opportunity to do the whole, the 1996 version, which was like much more like a sleazeball than any other version. So yeah, like I do bring up that this is a flaw, that it makes no sense. I really wish John Goodman would have played Carl Denham in the 90s, because I just watched Manatee by Joe Dante. I think it's his best film, and I looked at John Goodman like, oh, he would have been a great Carl Denham in that adaptation. So yeah, this was the first time I think I brought up a lot of the Carl Denham flaws. Like, yeah, my version was much more in line with the Robert De Niro planned 96 performance. That footage also of Jake and Jacob in a scene was a deleted scene from my remake, which you can find on my channel. But again, I just rant about the flaws. But yeah, shooting this was fun to do. It was fun to find all the locations. I did map them out all ahead of time. You know what? Yeah, Dudley Moore was probably only the few good things about that movie, The Mighty Kong, which I will admit has been one of my... That was the one joke I wish I made, was that it was drug. I'm always concerned about showing clips of the movie, because I don't want the Lana Film Company, even in an episode I'm not even covering their shit, just a little clip that they're gonna start coming after me. Now, I will admit, they have been the biggest running joke, because they are the first few instances where they were the first studio that ever abused directly the copyright system, because I did a bad review on their movie was bad, and that's why they struck it. It wasn't because I was using the footage, even though they used that as the fog machine, the fog bank, to disguise their true intentions. But this one, they were just like, we didn't like your review, take it down. But I see all these other people, and they fucking do that. That was the moment. This part in the show was the moment where I was like, I actually, when I was watching it live, I was literally like, whoa, what are we doing here? And that's where I started to realize, oh, we have a problem here. And yeah, it's a total jab at Weinstein and the whole Me Too movement, which is understandable. That's okay. Again, I think it was handled well. Was it a little out of nowhere? I guess that was the intention, that was go out of nowhere, is that don't trust people who are too persuasive. If it's too good to be true, don't fucking buy it. Don't fucking buy it. Especially if they are throwing money at you. Don't fucking buy it. If they don't throw money at you, they might be a bit more persuasive, and they might actually mean well. But here it's like, ooh, this was the part of the show my eyebrows raised, and I'm like, hey show, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, what the hell are we doing? So, when I did this episode, I can't remember if it closed by the time I recorded it. Yeah, no, it was still on when I put out this episode, I believe. I think it was like a few months later they closed it down. And they put it out in Japan, which I don't know what the updates are in the production there, but we'll find out later on, I guess. Now, the ending was interesting. I knew because this was going to be probably the last episode of the season, I thought, well, why not end it like the original Kong and go up to the Empire State Building? I've never filmed anything there. I never filmed anything up there, so I thought, okay, this is a good chance. So Dad and I actually went at the peak of sunset. Perfect timing to get those shots. And we were it was 11th hour thing, we went up there, we got the shots. By the time we came back down, it was dark, and then we were right next to the New York Public Library where we did that shot in the locations where the military guys in 76 are like, he's coming down 5th Avenue almost on schedule. I do like doing these editor's notes if I don't have time to do new segments that kind of bring up new stuff. That is actually a take that Movie Bob does that I actually did take reference from. But yeah, the way it ended with going up the Empire State Building I felt was nice. Now, when I did go, the new Kong exhibit they had in there wasn't opened, so next time I go, I'll definitely get shots of that. But going up to the Empire State Building for me has always been the fun thing to do in New York, because that's the moment where you feel the Kong vibe, because you're going to his second castle, his second tower, and you're going there and you're just feeling that. I love the fact that there's like this 50s diner in the building, and it feels very much like 1933. And yeah, I just love the fact this building has not changed in almost 100 years. Like, it's still there, and it is one of the most gorgeous buildings I've ever seen in my life. Now, ending it with this music by James Newton Howard was tough because of the copyright. So the first time I posted this, because I'll post like different versions so it gets past copyright, it actually got claimed, so I had to use a cover track. And a lot of this I shot on my phone. And when we shot this, it was so bloody fucking windy that day because of the storms. Opening that door was a pain in the ass. You couldn't even open it. I had to force push it, so that's why you see that cut, where you don't even see me open it. And, yeah, Dad helped me shoot this, and my hair looks like I'm going to helicopter out of here. I just like the way that ends with that sunset. It's just a beautiful way to end the season and end that shot. That shot was just provided at YouTube at the end, but I did fade it with some stuff with Kong. I felt that was a nice way to end it. But yeah, that's it for this episode. It was really fun to put together. Huge thanks to everybody involved, to the musical crew and everything. And we're going to do more of these commentaries down the line because I do have to get back on them. But thank you so much. Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. Watch it again if you want. Support my Patreon. That will definitely help out fund more episodes and more stuff down the line. So until the next video, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms signing off saying, you know, this musical was awesome. This was a great episode. I'll see you later. Take it easy. I totally forgot. I am so sorry. The post-credit scene. People are wondering about this with the story. So this was an 11th hour call I had where I shot this over the summer of 2020. This was a last-minute call. I was just, you know, filming some other episodes in the fictional dimensional transporter. So I had this footage, but then I had to... At the time this was being released, I had just moved into my new apartment. So I had to explain a continuity flaw at the 11th hour because there was going to be a total change in the next season. So that's why you see that transition, that it goes from the dimensional transporter to the new room. And the whole idea was that this was supposed to be the same house. But because I moved, I couldn't go back and film at my old house. So we had to kind of match this out where, oh, it's the same room, but there was a huge update. So it was all played for a joke of continuity. And this was a last-minute shot. I got JT is Reborn, Sean, to help me out with this. And it turned out really well. I think this was a good way to kind of segue to the new locations. It's very much a nod to Nostalgia Critic when he would always, the wall would change and there's just, oh, it's just a new location because every time he moved, he had, the color changed on the wall. And I love the fact that in this part, Sean's just kind of channeling a geeky Captain Kirk, which is funny. But yeah, at this time when I was editing this, yeah, I had just moved and I was just setting up everything. The room wasn't fully finished, but it was a nice segue. I just wanted to bring that up because I completely forgot there was a post-credit scene in this episode. And, yeah, there was no catch, there's no joke. It was just meant to be a gag at the continuity. Anyway, that's it, guys. Now this is real. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. BigJackFilms signing off. I'll see you guys later. Enjoy. And, yeah, awesome. But maybe we can hope for something a bit more brighter. Thanks for your help.
Oh, the bill's $5,000.
Well, guys, welcome to our new reviewing location. I hope you enjoy it, and I can't wait to show off more next year. So until the next video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. This is BigJackFilms, signing off. I should really put more security in this place.